I want to talk about something that might actually sound completely ridiculous. And it's around the topic of eating in order to stay awake. So, what if one of the biggest reasons you're struggling to stay awake on night shift is because you've been following advice that was created over 100 years ago? So, think about it. You're driving home at 5 a.m. in the morning. Perhaps you've just had a meal around 2 a.m. because everyone, says you've got to keep your energy up. But what if that meal is actually making you less alert and not more? So today I want to challenge one of the biggest myths in shift work, and that is eating to stay awake. Because the science has changed, but the advice hasn't. So, where did this belief actually come from? Because I used to believe it too. I went and studied nutritional medicine, and it was one of the things that we were often taught. Food is fuel. Food is fuel. But of course, in the middle of the night, you're tired, so you eat, and it makes complete sense, doesn't it? But here's what fascinated me when I started digging into the history. This whole idea that workers should eat during the night to keep their energy up actually didn't stem from biology. It came from factories. Back during the Industrial Revolution, factories started running around the clock. Workers were doing incredibly physical labor, 12-hour shifts, manual work, heavy lifting, and employers needed people to keep producing, to keep going. So meal breaks became part of industrial life. Then, during World War One and World War Two, governments actually encouraged factories to build canteens. So they started to serve hot meals, stews, meat, just a lot of heavy, heavy things. And the thinking or logic behind that was simple, is that food equals fuel and fuel equals productivity. And honestly, for someone shoveling coal or building aircraft, that probably wasn't unreasonable. But here's the problem. We've carried that belief into modern shift work, even though the science has completely changed. So I want you to think about this, is that your body isn't a car. We've all heard it. Food is fuel. And technically, that is true. It is a true statement. But your body isn't a petrol tank. If your car is low on fuel, you fill it up. Instantly, it can drive again. Your body doesn't work like that, though. When you eat, you don't suddenly become more alert. First, you have to digest the food. You have to then absorb it. You then have to process it. And then the body has to store it. And of course, then move nutrients around the body. But digestion is actually one of the most energy demanding things that your body does. So when you eat a big meal at 2 in the morning, you're asking your body to do two massive jobs at once. Number one is to stay awake, and number two is to digest that meal. And at the exact time, your brain is actually saying or screaming out to you, I was actually hoping we'd be asleep right now. I'm sure you can probably relate to that at 2 o'clock in the morning. So, what does the research actually say on this? Well, this is where the science gets quite interesting. Researchers have looked at what happens when night shift workers eat during the biological night. There was one NIH study that found that people who ate overnight had significantly higher blood glucose levels than those who kept their meals to daytime hours. And why was this the case? because your metabolism follows your body clock too. It's not just sleep that is circadian, as in having that 24-hour where things happen every 24 hours. It's not just your sleep that's circadian. Your digestive system is also circadian. Your insulin response is also circadian. Your ability to process carbohydrates is also circadian. So your whole digestive system isn't expecting food, and certainly not heavy meals like a beef lasagna at around 2 o'clock in the morning. And here's a really important part. Researchers have even looked specifically at driving performance. Now, this is a big one, considering when you're doing night shift, of course, after that night shift, you have to drive home. So, in this particular study, they compared 3 groups. One group ate a large meal overnight, one had a small snack, and one didn't eat at all. So, guess which group drove the worst afterwards? It was the large meal group. They had much more lane deviations. So when they were driving, they ended up crossing over to the next lane. There was more speed variability. So there was a lot of acceleration and then going back and forth, and more time outside the safe driving zone. So think about that. The very thing they were eating to stay alert actually reduced their alertness. I'm going to say that again because I really want you to understand it. The very thing that they were eating, eating to stay alert, actually reduced their alertness. And this is huge, as I'm sure you can probably agree. So why do so many shift workers swear by it? The real reason, you think food gives you energy. Because food doesn't just provide nutrients, especially at 2 o'clock in the morning. It provides relief. You're bored, so you might eat. You're stressed, so you eat. You're lonely, so you eat. Everyone is going into the lunchroom, so you go too. It breaks up the shift. It gives you something to do. It creates connection. It gives your brain, a little bit of a dopamine hit. But that's very different from being physiologically more alert. So here's the challenge that I want to set forth in this week's Fix Your Shift strategy, is that I call it question your hunger. The next time you're on shift and you suddenly think, I need something to eat so I can wake up, don't immediately head for the vending machine. Instead, just run through this checklist. Ask yourself, am I actually hungry, or am I trying to solve tiredness with food? If you're genuinely hungry, of course, don't ignore this, but make it strategic and choose something small. Maybe a little bit of protein, like a little bit of cheese, maybe some Greek yogurt, a boiled egg, some nuts, just some kind of little protein snack, something that's going to satisfy hunger without giving your digestive system a full workout. And then notice something. How alert do you actually feel over the next hour? And compare that with the actual nights that you eat a larger meal. Now, of course, don't try this forever. Just try it for the next 7 days and become a scientist of your own biology. And next week, we'll see, what we can then fix next. So I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned over the years is this, is just because something has been done for generations doesn't mean it's biologically correct for decades. So we've been told that eating during the night keeps us awake. But what the research is now showing us is that eating large meals, especially during a biologically night, may actually be making staying awake much, much harder. So the goal isn't necessarily to stop eating, although that does suit a lot of people. The goal is to stop using food as your primary alertness strategy. Because if you're relying on food to keep you awake, you're asking your digestive system to solve a circadian problem. And that's a job it was never designed to do.